Okay, so let's go over the three tricky rules of power. So let's go over rule number 8, which is if you have a negative power, turn it upside down. I.e., if you have a to the power of 2, that should give you a over a squared. So suppose you had 7 to the power of minus 3. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to write 1 over 7 to the power of 3. And we're going to have to work out what 7 to the power of 3 is. So if you do 7 times 7 times 7, so 7 times 7 is 49, times that by 7, so let's work it out here. So 49 times 7, so 9 times 7 is 63, and 7 times 4 is 28. 28 plus 6 is 34. So 343. Okay, so 7 to the power of negative 3 is 1 over 343. Let's go over rule number 9. So rule number 1 states if you have a fractional power, i.e. 1 to the power of 4, your answer will be the quad root of b. So suppose you had 64 to the power of 1/4. Essentially what you have to do is rewrite that as 4 on the outside and 64 inside. And so you think, alright, so which number do I have to multiply to itself 4 times to give me 64? So a times a times a times a gives me 64. So the only number that I could think of that could give me 64 by multiplying itself 4 times is 4. And b, so okay, so let's go over rule number 9. So rule number 1 is if you have a fractional power, for example b to the power of 1 over 4, you should rewrite that as the quad root of b. So let me give you an example. So let's say that I had 64 to the power of 1/3. You're going to have to rewrite that as the cube root of 64. Okay, so what does the cube root of 64 actually mean? So you have to think of a number I have to multiply to itself 3 times to give me 64. So I'm thinking a times a times a gives me 64. Okay, so let's try a couple of things. So let's try 2 times 2 times 2. So we know that 2 times 2 is equals to 4, and then 4 times 2 is equals to 8. So that can't be our final answer, so that you can just rub that off. And let's try 3 times 3 times 3. So 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 times 3 is 27. That doesn't give us 64, so that's not the number we're looking for. Let's try 4 times 4 times 4. So 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times 4 is 64. Yep, that's the value we're looking for. So we do 4 times 4 times 4, that gives us 64. So that means the quad root of the cube root of 64 is 4. And that's our final answer. Okay, so let's go over rule number 10, which is two-stage fractional powers, i.e. b to the power of 3/4, which is the quad root of b to the power of 3. So essentially what happens is the denominator, in this case being 4, we take the quad root of that, which is of b, and then we perform to the power of the numerator, in this case being 3. So suppose that we had 27 to the power of 4/3. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the cube root of that number, 27, and then we're going to perform the power of the numerator, in this case being 4. So we know that the cube root of 27 is equals to 3, and then we do 3 to the power of 4, and then we think, okay, 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 is equals to what? So 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 3 is 9, 9 times 9 is 81. Okay, and that's how you do rule number 10, the two-stage fractional powers. So let's move over to the special rule, which is the square root can be positive or negative, i.e. if you had 64 squared, you can have two values, 8 or minus 8. So suppose that we had the square root of 36. You're going to have two answers. So the first answer you're going to have is 6, because 6 times 6 is 36, and your other answer is minus 6, because minus 6 times minus 6 is 36. And similarly, if you had the square root of 81, you will have two answers. You have 9 and minus 9. So now that we have gone through all the rules of powers and roots, you're now ready to do the practice questions. So go through all the questions, and once you're done, feel free to do the powers and roots quiz and see how well you do. Good luck.